Michigan's Hunter Dickinson is one of the most recent big names to enter the transfer portal. And you know what? Despite Carolina's interesting history with him, he needs to come be a Tar Heel. I'm about to tell you why.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Monday, April 3rd, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I am your host, Isaac Schade, and I want to thank you for joining us today on National Championship Monday. And I don't know about you, but I got all the bittersweet feels going on. Just thinking about yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of knocking off Duke in the Final Four. And man, just so many good memories, but it's so painful to watch and just remember what didn't happen this year, right? Anybody else with me on that? I'm sure I am not alone there. So, what does Carolina need to get back to that position in 2023-24? Well, as I teased off the top, Hunter Dickinson, one of the best big men in the country, is now in the transfer portal himself. If you've been with us as we've kind of gone through the first couple of weeks of the transfer season here and looking towards building next season's roster, you know that one of the things Carolina really, really needs is front court help, front court depth. And so we're going to talk more about that. So I want to give you some reasons why I believe Hunter Dickinson is an option, and then a couple reasons why it might not be the best fit. And so let's start with the positive. I've got about 4 or 5 reasons for you. Number one, just said it a second ago, why Hunter Dickinson should come to North Carolina. North Carolina needs front court depth. I've said that I believe at least 2 of the 5 remaining scholarships have to go to front court players, not just a wing, but a 4 or a 5, preferably guys who can shoot, right? But right now, Will Shaver's gone, and obviously Pete Nance's eligibility is gone. So you've got Armando, you've got Jalen Washington, and you've got Zayden High. That's your front court rotation right now, unless Carolina just goes a whole bunch of small ball. But you need front court depth. Dickinson would certainly provide that. But point number 2, why he should come be a Tar Heel, Hunter Dickinson is not just front court depth. There's the potential for he and Armando Bacot to be the starting front court, allowing Jalen Washington to come off the bench while he still works back into full-on basketball form. Remember, he had been out of commission for so long before he hopped back in this year, and it's probably going to take him some more time. The talent is there, the skills are there, the shooting is there, but Jalen's still working his way back. Just keep that in mind. And I know that Armando and Hunter are both pretty traditional bigs, right? But number 3, why Hunter Dickinson should come to North Carolina. This man also is an outside shooter. He is not just a back to the basket big, somebody, and that's not Armando too. So Armando is really good going forwards toward the rim, right? But Armando is not going to step out and knock it down. Hunter Dickinson, on the other hand, will absolutely do that. He is a career 36% three-point shooter. In fact, that was up to 42.1% this past season on 125 attempts. And so you look at that and you think, well, that's great. Pete Nance brought in 40-some% the season before. Yeah, but on fewer attempts than this. Dickinson is by no means like an RJ Davis or Caleb Love volume shooter. Maybe not even Brady Manek volume shooter. But he that 40% is on more than Pete Nance's attempts his final season at Northwestern. And so there is some legitimacy to that, certainly. Another reason for Hunter Dickinson to come to North Carolina, he's a much better free throw shooter than Armando Bacot, and Carolina has made a living at the free throw line the past several years, where so you look at that and it's like, man, you'd love to have bigs on the floor that are really, really reliable. I mean, Sure, you'd love 80%, but like with Armando, you remember, well, you probably don't remember because it's a long time ago now, but ahead of the season, I said, man, I'd love if we could just get Armando to right at 70% from the free throw line. Obviously, that didn't happen. But as for Hunter Dickinson, he's a career 75.3% free throw shooter. Down a little bit this past season, 72.7%. But his sophomore year, 80.2% from the free throw line, Hunter Dickinson was. So this dude is going to fill it up for whomever he goes to play for, and you'd love for it to be the Tar Heels. So Dickinson, career 75.3% free throw shooter. For reference, Mondo's career high in a single season is 67%. And that's no knock on Mondo. That's just what his game is and isn't. But it's just to say Hunter Dickinson would take it that much further in terms of free throw shooting. And then the fifth reason I'd suggest that Hunter Dickinson should come play and be a Tar Heel is because if you're not already aware, these guys played together in high school on the AAU circuit. And they know each other's games. They know how to complement each other well, those kind of things. In fact, you might have even seen on social media, Mondo was tweeting at Hunter Dickinson once the news came out, like, as he's always doing, working to recruit and get guys to Chapel Hill. And so you might look at this and say, Mondo doesn't want another big clogging things up with him. Well, clearly he wants him to come. So those are 5 reasons why I think Hunter Dickinson does need to come be a Tar Heel this season. Carolina needs front court depth. Dickinson isn't just front court depth. He's a shooter. He's not just depth, he's a starter. Dickinson is a shooter from the 3-point line and fourthly from the free throw line. And he and Armando already have history of playing together. And so he could slide right in and pick up and figure things out with Mondo, figure things out with RJ. And you could be in good shape. Obviously, North Carolina has a rich history of bigs playing together. And I know that's not what Coach Davis is trying to do, but man, Roy Williams is right there just a phone call away. Let me give you a couple reasons why it might not work out as well for Hunter Dickinson to come, because I don't want to just paint it all rosy, right? Let me give you the flip side of it too. Number one, we have to legitimately ask, could Armando and Hunter Dickinson play together? Would it be more of what we saw this year with Dickinson not translating out to the 3-point line as much as we think he would? And then defenses being able to sag and clog the lane, because that's not what Carolina needs or wants at all. Would it be too much of both of them in the paint? Could they coexist in that way? Would Dickinson legitimately be able to step out and maybe volume up a little bit on the 3-point shooting? Again, I'm not asking him to be Brady Manek, because he brings other things. Just like Brady brought that with that quick trigger 3, Dickinson brings other things that Brady didn't, right? And so could he do that with enough regularity to draw the attention away from Armando Bacot? We'd have to find out. Number 2, there's just something weird in Dickinson's career playing North Carolina. The Tar Heels and Wolverines played twice in Dickinson's 3 years as a Wolverine, once in the ACC Big Ten tournament, and this past season in the Jumpman Invitational in Charlotte. So 2 seasons ago, when they played in the ACC Big Ten, it was a season low in points for Dickinson. 4. He only had 3 games all season where he scored in single digits, that 4 against North Carolina, and 2 games when he scored 9 points. And then this past year, same thing. Dickinson only had 3 single-digit games, one of which was against the Tar Heels when he only scored 9 points. It wasn't a season low this year, but obviously very close to it. Is there something to that with the Tar Heels, or is it just like, is it perhaps because he and Mondo played together and Mondo knows where the weaknesses are and how to guard him? Or would that kind of weirdness translate if he played for Carolina, right? Like, would there be a more consistent, this isn't going as well? I don't know, but it feels like something you definitely would want to take a chance on. And then thirdly, on why it might not be the best idea is, would Bacot and Dickinson be okay playing kind of a 1-2 punch? Like Dickinson for so long has been the guy at Michigan. I know they've had some other really impressive athletes. In fact, Kobe Buffkin just declared for the draft on Sunday, I believe it was. And so, they've got some dudes, Jet Howard, Coach Howard's son himself, but Dickinson has been the center of attention for that team for a while now. Like, could he come in and realize that this is the RJ and Armando Bacot show, and would he be a third part of that? Would he be willing to take a back seat? Would he and Armando be willing to kind of trade back and forth? Those dynamics are just part of what's at play now in the transfer portal era, and something we would certainly have to keep our eyes on. All in all, though, I would love for Hunter Dickinson to come be a North Carolina Tar Heel this season. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. Anything you think I missed about why he would make a good Tar Heel or why he wouldn't in the upcoming season? Let me know. Would love to hear from you. Well, we've talked a good bit about reclassification in the past couple weeks, and we got some more updates, both from Elliot Cadeau, Andy, and Jackson over the weekend, and a little bit of something on Mr. Simeon Wilcher coming up for you too. And we'll do that in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's the time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'm going to be voting for that churro bar, and I want to know who you're voting for. Plus, when you go vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered in a drawing with a chance to be one of 50 Locked On listeners who will receive a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will receive a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered directly monthly to their door. You got to try Built. It's so good. For starters, they are high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. So run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff, and go ahead and pick up a box while you're there. Hop in and support your pick. Built Bar, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Also, folks, please make sure you check out the brand new show on the Locked On Podcast Network. That's Locked On College Basketball. It's just finishing off its first season. It started back on November 7th, the first day of this season. You can hear from big name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts. Okay, on Friday, we did a show where we kicked off just talking about the possibility of Elliot Cadeau reclassifying to 2023. He was in the midst of kind of this run in the Geico High School National Championships. And so there was a lot of rumor about that. It seemed like Ian Jackson conversation had been shut down as far as a reclass. And with both of these guys right now, it sounds like the plan is for both of them to stay in 2024. However, we did get kind of some language and updates over the weekend. And so I want to update you on those things. Let's start with Cadeau. On last Friday's show, as I said, we took that time to speculate about the possibility of him classifying, whether he would or not. By the way, congrats to Elliot and his Link Academy team on their victory over Zayden High in the Geico National Championship over the weekend. He set a new tournament record, Cadeau did, with 29 total assists. And you need to go watch the highlights. Some of these passes are just absolutely silly. Great stuff there. Well, interestingly, throughout some of the broadcasts, in particularly the championship game on Saturday, was that when it was? Yes, Saturday. Cadeau, was kind of going off, and Paul Biancardi, who is an ESPN guy that does a great job, talked multiple times about the likelihood of a reclass for Elliot Cadeau. Well, Cadeau was asked, just in the interview you do after the game is over, about when we would be expecting to see him in Chapel Hill. And this is what he said, and I quote, "I'm not sure yet. As of right now, 2024, I'll see you guys in Chapel Hill." Now, you could interpret that a couple different ways. Legitimately, he means as of right now, 2024 is the plan, right? Like, we know that and we've all heard it. But keep in mind that it's an ongoing conversation with he and the coaching staff as well. But and there's no flat denial. That's part of what you hear there. I'm not sure yet. As of right now, I'm still in 2024. So it's not a hard, firm yes or no. It seems like the baseline right now continues to be 24, but it's an ongoing conversation. Now, as to Ian Jackson, Ian is part of USA Junior basketball national team, and they practiced at Energy Stadium ahead of the Final Four on Saturday. They were practicing Friday, hanging out, just getting an opportunity to experience some of this highest level college basketball at the location of the Final Four. So Ian Jackson, you'll recall, we've talked about on the show, has previously pretty flatly denied, or pretty firmly said that he was staying in 2024. He did that when he reaffirmed his commitment to North Carolina in the same kind of conversation talked about with 247 Sports, that he was planning to stay in 2024. Well, in some conversations with Adam Zagoria at these rehearsals, who does a great job at the Zags blog, which is not about Gonzaga, it's just because his last name is Zagoria. Jackson seemed like he's still 24, but was more open to the possibility of a reclass than it seemed like he made it in that previous statement to 247 Sports. So he said, quote, to Zagoria, "My mindset is to stay in 2024, and then that's end quote, but that reclassifying is certainly something to consider." He said he is in the process of taking online classes right now that would prepare him to be able to graduate early and come on to Chapel Hill if he and the coaching staff together decided that's what made most sense. Once again, as we've said, for the university, for the team, and for Ian Jackson himself. Because again, this is all about these young men and their families making the best decisions for them, regardless of what the team needs right now. And I know for you and I, we look at the team side of it so much more and often think, well, what does Carolina need to be the best? And that's great. But we got to always remember that this is about the development of young men and women. And yes, you want to win basketball games and softball games and tennis matches and soccer matches along the way. But at the end of the day, this is an institution that needs to go about their academic business and do what's best for these young men and women. And I know the pushback on that with Ian Jackson too would be, yeah, but he's probably only going to be there for 1 year anyway. I hear that. But beyond what's just best for the basketball team, always got to talk about what's best for these young men and their families. So another part of the quote that Ian Jackson said was, quote, "planning on staying on for high school, but I'm taking classes," end quote. And here's the thing for me with both these guys, it's just nice to know that all the conversation is between these young men and the coaching staffs, and together they're going to make mutually beneficial decisions. And I'm great with that, and I hope you are too. Like that's where it needs to live, with the coaching staff, the player, and their families. That's the only people who should be making these decisions. And by the way, Jackson mentioned in that article with on Zag's blog about continuing to recruit Boogie Fland, who is another NYC area basketball player. And he's like, hey, let's get that NYC pipeline to North Carolina going again. That would be great. Now, keep in mind, part of the reason for the Cadeau conversation to go on is the search for a more pure point guard for next season. Again, my hope has been always that RJ Davis would be the guy to get that opportunity, especially now with Caleb gone. Let's see what RJ on his own can and will do. And obviously there will be other backcourt mates along with him, but would love to at least see RJ get the opportunity to really fully do that. But at the same time, I should say, I've been assured by a former guest of this show, the father of an incoming Tar Heel guard, that Carolina will be in very good hands when his son steps onto campus this summer. And I don't know about you, but I'm here to tell you, I am very excited about the Simeon Wilcher experience upcoming this season, and however long we get to see him as a Tar Heel, and obviously continuing to cheer for him as he moves on, whenever that is, hopefully to the NBA, to have a great career there. And so lots of interesting stuff going on with recruiting and freshmen coming in and all this. It's just so much in flux in the current era. Speaking of which, we got some news over the weekend about one potential transfer that will not be happening, and it's an unfortunate one because it was one that I personally was very excited about. I'll tell you all about that in just a second. Well, one of the rumors kind of floating around was the possibility of Villanova's Justin Moore transferring to North Carolina. Apparently there was interest there. It was never first or even secondhand confirmed for me. And so I always kind of held this idea loosely, but I was excited about it. You might recall that Justin Moore 2 seasons ago was hurt in Villanova's Elite 8 game, and it really hurt their chances in the Final Four against Kansas and kind of put them to where it was like, yeah, this is Kansas's game to win. And that turned out to be true. And obviously really unfortunate. And then Moore was able to come back midway through this season. Villanova kind of had a season pretty similar to Carolina, where it wasn't awful. It wasn't 8-20 bad, but it was not Villanova's standard. They had a new coach this year, Kyle Neptune. And so Justin Moore came back and did some work. So there were rumors of Moore being interested in coming to Carolina. There were rumors of him going to Syracuse, interestingly enough, neither of which turned out to be true. Although, funnily enough, when I started kind of trying to look into the Syracuse rumors more, I just looked up Justin Moore Syracuse, and it turns out their head women's rowing coach at Syracuse is named Justin Moore. So that one kind of confused me for a second. They're like, oh, I guess he's changing from a basketball player to a rowing coach. But anyway, turns out Justin Moore is going to stay at Villanova for his 5th year. And so would have loved to see him transfer, but that's the option. There would have been a great get for Carolina. Senior level leadership experience, comes from a great program, learned under Jay Wright, who I don't know about you, but I really respect Jay Wright, both as like a person, as a basketball mind, as a coach. And so anyone that, that Jay Wright would have had and would have enjoyed having in his program, which he did, I'd be fine with. Come on to North Carolina. By the way, Jay Wright, to me, has done a fantastic job on set and in studio for CBS and Turner, throughout the NCAA tournament. That's a great get for them, and so glad to have his mind in talking during these tournament games. Really interesting. Although I did see a couple funny moments at times between he and Kenny Smith anytime the 2016 national championship would come up. Speaking of which, wanted to give you my national championship pick for tonight. It is UConn by 7, favored by 7.5 at FanDuel over San Diego State. And listen, here's the thing for me. UConn has just been boat racing people. They started off the season winning their first 14 games. The first 13 of those were by double digits. Then they lost 6 of their next 8. It was a bad defensive time where 4 of those 6 losses, they gave up 80 points and only gave up 80 points one other time all season long outside of that. And so it was just kind of whatever. And then they've gone 14-2 since, with the only losses being an away game and a neutral game where they lost by like 3-2, 5 total points they've lost by down the stretch. So anyway, all of that to say, UConn, who's won their first 5 games of the NCAA tournament by double digits, they're going to do that again in a 6th. I have them beating San Diego State by 11 points, smallest margin of victory, but another double-digit victory. Curious to hear your thoughts, how quickly you think or who you think will win Monday's national championship game. And then we get to start all over, hit the reset button, and yay, look ahead to North Carolina returning to where they're supposed to be atop this sport next season. Let me give you a quick weekend wrap up from Carolina athletics, and then that'll be the day. Unfortunately, women's lacrosse lost just their 2nd game of the season. They were at number 12 Notre Dame over the weekend, lost 12-16. Tough one there. Women's tennis, though, man, they just keep doing their thing. They stay undefeated with victories over Florida State 6-1 on Friday and Miami 5-2 on Saturday. Just the 2nd time in ACC play that they've given up more than 1 point in a match. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. 3 regular season matches left for the women's tennis team before the ACC tournament, and then they'll turn their attention to the NCAA tournament, where they will be seeking that elusive first hardcourt outdoor national championship. As you know, they've won the indoor one for the ITA many, many times, including multiple in a row, but still have not been able to get that NCAA title, so they'll be looking to do that. Men's tennis split against 2 of the other 3 North Carolina ACC schools. They lost to NC State 1-4 and then beat Wake Forest in a very close match 4-3. Softball dropped a weekend series at Virginia, losing 2 of 3, but the men's baseball team went up to Notre Dame and was able to get a series win away from the Bosch, winning 2 of 3 themselves. So great stuff there for the guys baseball team. Is really working to put things together here as we get into April. You might remember last year, they kind of mirrored the men's basketball team where they had kind of done okay, and then just blitzed things down the stretch of the regular season. So would love to see the baseball team really take off here in April and May as we move towards the ACC tournament and regional play and all that fun stuff. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. It means the world. March, I've looked at all the numbers. It was by far the biggest month we've ever had on the show. And that's all because of you guys who tune in and watch and listen day after day after day. And I cannot tell you how much that means to me. Thank you. I love getting to do this with you. And I hope you enjoy hanging out with me as well. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me on Twitter if you don't already at Isaac Schade. Shoot me an email to the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Have lots of fun emails that come in there and get to have just more in-depth conversation with anybody that's interested in talking beyond the podcast. Speaking of which, send in your Heels of the Week nominations that we'll do on Friday as we do every week. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show, smash the like button, and leave some comments. And again, for your next listen, check out Locked On College Basketball. We'll be with you all off-season as well, even after the national championship game, talking transfer portal, recruiting, coaching carousel, all the stuff, conference realignment, you name it, we'll be doing it. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts. Folks, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. But until then, peace.